at Department of Pharmaceutical Engineering and Technology at Indian Institute of Technology, BHU, Varanasi. So we'll be talking on very relevant topic, which is very useful to all the academicians who are working in any of the field, related to science, literature, art, or any other field as well. So I'll share my screen with all of you. I hope the screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So it's about the art and science of academic writing, from manuscript to publication. I believe manuscript writing is definitely, is the art which one needs to learn. So when we do any kind of research, whether it is related to some historical perspectives, some literature reviewing, or doing some experiment on the bench to answer some important questions, in any of the area, it's very important. Once you have some strong results in your hand, you want to publish it in the form of a manuscript. So before I start my talk, I would like to pay my tribute to Mahamana Pandit Madan Mohan Malveji, who is the founder of this beautiful temple of learning where we all are sitting today. It's Banaras Hindu University and IIT BHU Varanasi. So recently we have completed our 100 years of existence, and in honor of the centenary celebration, Government of India has launched this portrait this time. The questionnaire for all of you. So these are the contents which we are going to learn today, basically. So the most important question is why publication writing is important. Before we learn like how to write the publication, meaningful publication, the first question which is very relevant and important to all of us. Okay, everybody is comfortable with English, or do I need to use Hindi?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
English is okay.
Okay, perfect. So I will try to use mix of both in case some participants are not comfortable with English. I will try to use mix of both in between. So why publication writing is important? That is the first question. The second question is, what are the different types of publication? Kitne type of publication hote hain? And then how to identify the right journal for your manuscript. In today's world, there are like more than thousands of journals. So as a scientist, as a researcher, you need to identify which journal is most suitable for your manuscript. And the fourth important point is about the plagiarism. So these days, it is becoming more and more relevant that the work which we are doing is novel. It should not be the repetition, or there should not be involvement of any kind of manipulation or data fabrication. Sometimes plagiarism is not intentional. Sometimes it is unintentional as well, and sometimes we just fall into this trap unknowingly without understanding that we are getting into this kind of problem. So we'll be talking about plagiarism as well, what it is and what are the consequences of plagiarism and how we can avoid it. That also we'll talk in this discussion. Then if the time permits, then we'll be talking about another important aspect, which is grant writing, the funding opportunities. I know some of you may not be related to the field where we need to do the actual experiments in the white lab, but for the people like us, where we are involved in the drug discovery or some development of some technology or some formulations or treatment of certain disease, we need to do a lot of experimental work on the bench where we need a lot of chemicals, consumables, antibodies, equipments, which are very, very expensive. So to procure that, we need financial support. So sometimes financial support is there from the institute, but sometimes it is not like all enough to do that project. So in that case, we need to secure the grant from the funding agencies within the country and sometimes from outside the country as well. So we'll be talking about what are the different types of grants and if the time permits. And then scientific responsibility as a researcher, what we are supposed to do and what we are not supposed to do as a scientist. So just imagine, if naturalist life, it would be a very happy one if we had only to observe and never to write. This is what Charles Darwin has mentioned. अगर कुछ लिखना नहीं होता, just सिर्फ देखना होता, ऑब्जर्व करना होता, कितनी अच्छी बात है, राइट? बट अगर हम साइंस की बात करें, साइंस में इस चीज से कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है कि आपके रिजल्ट्स कितने अमेजिंग हैं, कितने स्पेक्टेकुलर हैं. The most important thing is that your work is not completed until your results are published somewhere. So findings, doing experiments, observing, analyzing your data is very, very important. But at the same time, until and unless you don't publish it, the work is not completed in science. So we'll be exploring the different steps which are involved in rough manuscript writing to the published paper. Planning your manuscript writing, the very first question which we asked in the beginning as well, why to publish? क्यों करना है publish? क्या जरूरत है publish करने की? So publishing, as I mentioned, is one of the most important and the necessary step embedded in the scientific research process. It is also necessary for the graduation and the career progression. If I talk about some PhD students, right? So in most of the institute, there is a mandatory guideline that one has to publish at least 2 or at least 1 Scopus index paper in some reputed journal. Then only the student can submit their PhD thesis. At the same time, if we talk about the faculty member, just like all of you and us, during the promotions from assistant professor to associate professor, in most of the institute, there are certain set of guidelines. And even at the time of recruitment as well, when you are a student, when you are done with your PhD and postdoc, and if somebody want to apply for a position at any of the institute, not only in India, in any part of the world, people will look at your publication, your research profile, what you have done in the PhD, what you have done in the postdoc. And of course, at the time of promotion also, this will be looked and considered upon, like how much work you have done since you joined the institute. And it's very important for getting the timely promotion as well. So different institutes have different guidelines. For example, in IIT BHU, one has to publish at least 3 to 4 publications, in a good journals. And then to become a professor, from associate professor, at least 10 research publications. Now the next question is what to publish. It is very, very obvious that anything which is novel, new, and original, only those things can be published. Only those results can be published. So it can be a result, new result, or it can be a new or original methodology. At the same time, you can also publish the review. Review means you can publish the review articles basically, or you can also publish the summaries of some important subject which is current and recent. At the same time, the manuscript which advances our knowledge and understanding in a certain scientific field, that should also be published. Now, just opposite to this, what not to publish. Again, it is very, very obvious. The reports or the manuscript which are not having any scientific content or not having any scientific interest, those kind of reports should not be published. At the same time, the work which is like kind of outdated. Outdated means if somebody is working in an area for which we already have a solution or for which, people have stopped, taking interest. So those kind of work is also not supposed to be published. Okay, because it's already out of the date and nobody is, interested in that kind of work. Third important point, duplication of previously published work. This is very, very important. And that is why, when we start any kind of project, whether it is a small project or a big project belonging to a master's student or a PhD student, we always make sure through proper literature review, literature search, that this kind of work has not been done before. So the literature review is weak or is not complete, then probably you will land up, in working in an area on a topic which is already been worked by someone else. So that will cost you a lot of, wastage of time, money, and other resources. So that's why I always tell a student in the beginning itself, when they join my lab, that this is the topic, or you come up with your own idea on topic, and then do the thorough literature review, come up with the presentation, and tell me your idea and hypothesis. And why do you think this is novel? So after a lot of brainstorming or troubleshooting, we decide, okay, that this kind of maybe novel, and then we should go ahead with that. At the same time, the conclusions which are incorrect or unacceptable, right? Those kind of data are also not published. Unfortunately, there are very small number of journals which accept the negative findings. But yes, there are 1 or 2 journals which do accept the negative result as well, like Journal of Negative, findings. So that is one journal which accepts the negative result. But most of the journals, they do not enter the negative findings or negative result. And there's a strong reason behind that. Because if the data is negative, if some particular drug is not working or there is some other issue, then there could be a number of reasons for that. There could be some technical error, there could be some manual error, or there could be many other, errors, which is difficult to figure out why this particular set of experiment doesn't work, or why the data doesn't come in a way we have planned the hypothesis. So that makes difficult, to publish, which is generally negative in terms of the findings. And at the end of the day, you need a good manuscript to present your contribution to the scientific community. That is very, very obvious, because you are going to present your work in a national or an international platform. So if your work is not good, your manuscript is not good, basically, you may not feel, proud of it. Okay. So these are some of the questions which you need to answer before you actually write your manuscript. So you should ask yourself why you want to publish your paper. So the very first question which you should ask yourself is the results or the data or the hypothesis new and interesting? If yes, is it a current hot topic in the market or not? Even if not, you can still debate on few more questions, like, have you provided solution to some novel and difficult problem? Sometimes it may be possible that the topic on which you are working may not be very hot, but even if you have provided solution to some significant problem of the society or some difficult problems which are existing in the society, your work will still be ranked as very novel. And the last question which you should ask yourself, क्या आप ready है publish करने के लिए? Are you ready to publish? और अगर इन सारे questions का आंसर अगर आपके पास हाँ आता है, yes आता है, so that means you can start preparing your manuscript. यहाँ के बाद आप manuscript writing में लग सकते हैं. हालांकि थोड़ा late कई बार okay. So yeah, this is the same thing which I discussed with all of you, like just in the form of diagrammatic way. So the results which are outdated, incorrect conclusions, or duplication of previously published work, this kind of work has no scientific value and cannot be published. At the same time, the work which is novel or recent, or it also leads to a significant enhancement of the published work, or maybe it is an up-to-date review of a subject or field. That kind of work is always, interesting, and of interest to audience, and it advances the field. So, sorry. So at this stage, I think you are ready to publish your work. Now, the next question is, what makes a strong manuscript? You have a manuscript, but do you think your manuscript makes a good manuscript or a strong manuscript? So to answer this question, you need to see that your manuscript, whether it can give a clear, useful, and exciting message or not. So I always tell my students when they join my lab as a master or PhD student, I always ask them, I always tell them, Writing a manuscript is just like preparing a movie, preparing a film. Just like in a movie, all the characters of the movie story, or all the sequences which director puts into the movie, in the story, they all runs in a very logical manner, in a flow-wise manner, right? So just imagine if some character will come in between without its introduction. Do you think audience will appreciate it? Audience will be confused. In the similar manner, who is your audience here? Your audience is the readers of your manuscript. So if your manuscript is not written in a logical flow, logical manner, like if there is no connectivity between the different paragraphs, between the different sentences, then readers are not going to understand what you have done and why you have done. So if it is very logically written, then reader will easily grasp the concept and the significance of your work. And in short, all the editors or reviewers or readers, all of them, they want to receive a well written or the well presented manuscript. Okay. Now the next question is, what are the different types of manuscript which one can write? So depending upon the work which you are doing, if you are doing some research work in your lab, you can always go for full length articles, or they are also known as full articles or the original articles. So these are generally considered as the most important papers because they involve the real-time experiments, whether in the lab or in the field or somewhere else. And they are often substantial and the significant completed piece of research basically in this kind of articles. Then there is another category of article which is known as the letters, or you can also call them like a rapid communication or the short communication. As the name indicates, these are short communication. That means they are having the limited amount of data or limited amount of information. So it might happen sometime that you have some very important data which you want to bring to the to the eyes of the audience all over the world. So you will not wait for the full experiment or the full details, and you would like to get it published as soon as possible. So in case of letters or short communication, the number of page limit is very less. Even the number of figures which you can put is limited. So in case of letters, these are generally short communication, which is around 3,000 to 2,500 words total. On the other hand, if you talk about this topmost category full articles, they can be anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 word limit. And then there is a third category which is known as the review papers. So review manuscripts generally, they are compilation of recent data or recent information from the recently published article. So in my PhD itself, I was not very sure about the review articles, like what are review articles exactly. And then हम अपने PhD supervisor से बात कर भी रहे थे, and then हमने publish किया review article. But तब तक हमें यही पता था कि review article is basically a compilation of data from the different source, different articles, and then compiling in one single article and then publishing it. But when I joined United States for my postdoctoral research in Johns Hopkins, at that time I was working on one project which somehow didn't work out. The drug didn't work out, but in the process I have read so much literature on the role of glia cells, which are the non-neuronal cells in the neuropathic pain. And then I came to know that, okay, this is something which is very, very interesting, and we can be able to compile it in the form of review article. So I was very happy and excited, and I went to my postdoc supervisor, which is Professor Srinivasa Raja, who is Director of Pain Research at Johns Hopkins. And I told him that I want to write the review article on glia cell and pain. So the very first question he asked me, what is the novelty in your review article? At that time I got shocked because nobody has asked me this question before. And I always thought that novelty is always for the research articles, not for the review article, but I was wrong. Just imagine you are writing a review article, for example, on diabetes, and you want to write a paper on like pathophysiology of diabetes and the drugs which are currently in the clinic for the treatment of diabetes. But just imagine if some other author in different part of the world has already published a similar kind of review where he or she must be talking about the diabetes, different pathways, mechanisms, and the drugs which are there for the treatment of the same. So do you think you are offering a better paper or a different paper from the one which is already published? No, actually. So that's why literature review is very, very important. It becomes very important. So that kind of work is already published. You need to figure out how your work is known. So in review article, generally, we compile the information from the research articles which are published in only last 4 to 5 years, not more than that. So whatever research data is available in the last 3-4 years, that we compile in the form of review article. Okay, and then the next is you have to self-evaluate your work and then ask yourself whether this data is good enough for a full-length article or not. And okay, and then if you feel okay, this is something which is very interesting, then you should be excited enough to publish your work as soon as possible and to bring it to the audience. And then the most important thing is that you can ask your supervisor and your colleagues to get their advice, like are there any problems or issues with your manuscript. Sometimes ज्यादातर ऐसा ही होता है, हम जो काम करते हैं, जो लिखते हैं, उसमें हमको गलतियां कम से कम मिलती हैं क्योंकि हमने किया होगा, लेकिन जब उसी काम को कोई दूसरा आदमी रिव्यू करता है, देखता है, तो पता लगता है कि इसमें तो बहुत सारी गलतियां हैं और वो काफी डिटेल में पढ़ा हुआ है. Okay, now the next important point is how to identify the best journal for the submission of a manuscript. So the very first point which you can do while deciding the submission for your research or review article, you look at the references which you have selected for your work and see in what journal these references were published. That will give you an idea about, okay, this could be the possible journals where you can publish your work too. And then second important, I would say, parameter is you see those journals and see what kind of articles these journals are publishing. And if you think that they are publishing the articles relevant to your field, then that means you can target those journals as well. And then after you have identified some of the journals, it is your job to make sure that the journal is peer-reviewed. It is not a predatory journal. There are several predatory journals these days who are just asking you the money to get your work published, and then they will say that okay, in 1 month or something like that, we'll publish your work. But you have to be careful about this. Okay, never submit your work in the predatory journal. And then you also need to look who is the journal's audience. Okay, sometimes, for example, you are working on something, a drug discovery where you are testing the drugs in the animal models, but you have picked the journal which is more clinical in nature, where most of the subjects are human, and doctors might be interested in that kind of manuscript. So general editor-in-chief itself will say no if you're not submitting your work to the relevant journal. Then the next important point is the average time to print, because many journals, they accept the article and then for at least 6 months, 1 year, they don't publish it basically. So as a researcher, as a scientist, you need your work to get timely published, because student has to graduate on time, so he cannot wait for 1 year to get his work published, right? And then the most another important factor is the impact factor. Although I do not recommend this factor too much, but still, nowadays people are judging the credibility of any journal based on its impact factor. Okay, so the more is the impact factor, the consider the journal is better. Okay, and how this impact factor is calculated? This impact factor is always calculated by the number of citation that journal received in the past year, or the articles which are published in that journal in the last year, how many citations those articles have received. So the more they were cited, more will be the journal's impact factor. Okay. And most importantly, okay, you just have to decide only one journal for publishing your work or submitting your work. Sometimes people try to submit their work in more than one journal, but that is highly unethical. So you just submit your work in one journal and wait for the comments by the reviewer and the editor. And if the reviewer and editor think that, okay, you have done a good work, so they will just give their comments, maybe minor revision or major revision. Okay. So this is another tool, I would say, to identify the right journal for your work. So this is also a toolbox where you can, put the keywords. Like if you're working in the field of neuroscience, neuropharmacology, drug discovery, you can put the keywords like neuroscience, drug discovery, drugs, molecules, or protein-protein interaction. Those kind of words, depending upon what work you have done, you just put some of the keywords. Like if you're working in the field of pain, you put pain. So based on your keywords, this web page, will give you the list of journals where your work can be published. Okay. And then there's another facility which is available, that you can put the abstract basically, okay, of your work. And then based on your abstract, this tool will suggest a list of journals where you can submit your work. So there's a couple of tools which are very helpful, in identify the right journal for your work. Now, as we mentioned in the previous slide, what makes a good manuscript? Any good manuscript should contain a very clear, useful, and the exciting scientific message, which is going in a flow, just like a story. Okay. So there should not be a jumbling of sentences. There should not be any incomplete sentences, or there should not be any, like typographical or grammatical errors. So all these things will affect the quality of your manuscript. So make sure that everything is in order, is flowing like a story from top to bottom. And you also need to make sure that your manuscript is properly formatted to the best. Okay. And then it has to be written in a style that transmit the messages clearly. So the layout is also very, very important. Most of the time the different layout of different journals are already mentioned in the guide to author. So before you start writing your manuscript, आप गाइड टू ऑथर में जा सकते हैं, वहाँ पे जाकर डिटेल गाइडलाइंस को आप डाउनलोड कर सकते हैं, फिर पढ़ सकते हैं कि हाउ दे वांट यू टू पुट द कंटेंट ऑफ द मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट. Okay. I will quickly take a glass of water. Just give me we will take a 2 to 3 minute of break. Okay. And then we can continue after that, starting from structuring your article, how to structure the article, what are the different components of the manuscript writing and why they are important to us. Okay. So we'll take a quick break of 2 to 3 minutes for drinking water.
Yeah.
Please mute yourself. I request you to mute. Okay, welcome back. So I hope everyone is here. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so now the next, important point is how you are supposed to structure your article, your manuscript, right? So we all know that any manuscript, especially if we talk about the research manuscript, it has different sections, starting from title of the manuscript, and then comes the abstract, and then keywords, right? Most of the time we don't pay much attention to, like, like what are these components and why they are supposed to be. Give me 1 second. There is a lot of noise. Let me figure out what is going on. Just give me 1 second. I think there's a lot of disturbance. So I was sorry for the disturbance. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Yeah. So these are the different components of any research manuscript, starting from title, abstract, keywords, and then introduction, followed by methodology, results, and discussion. And then comes the last part of the manuscript, where you are telling your story in a nutshell, which includes conclusion, and then followed by acknowledgements, references, and then supporting materials. Okay, so we'll discuss all these components one by one in detail, why they are important and why you should pay attention to all these components. Most of the time we are mostly focused on the methodology part and the results part, and then just discussion part, and we ignore all other important aspects of the manuscript. And when your manuscript goes to the editor, they straightforward reject it, because your manuscript is weak in the beginning itself. They will just go through the title of your manuscript and they will say that, okay, this is something which is not relevant to our journal. And without going into the result part or the discussion part or the novelty part of your manuscript, they will straightforward reject it. तो इसलिए बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है कि आपकी मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट का जो एक एक कंपोनेंट है आप उस पर पूरा ध्यान दें और उसको बहुत अच्छे से आप फ्रेम करें. ठीक है? So if we talk about the title of the manuscript, it should always reflect the identity of your paper, or identify the main issue of the paper. Basically, it should be concise, and at the same time it has to be accurate, unambiguous, specific, and complete. Okay, and in title you should use the professional language and avoid using any kind of abbreviations. तो कोई भी abbreviation जो है आपको title में allow नहीं है, चाहे वो standard abbreviation ही क्यों ना हो. So it is not allowed. Okay, and most importantly, the title should be such that it should be able to attract the readers, your audience. It has to be short, it has to be catchy, and that is the only way like how you can attract your audience. But at the same time, the title should not be too short as well. So the thumb rule is that it should not be too long, it should not be too less. I'll talk about that in the coming slides, how long it should be. Okay, so just few of the examples for you. Just imagine a manuscript with the following title, which is talking about the action of antibiotics on bacteria, right? So, do you think this article, this title looks complete, or the information which you're getting from this title is okay? No, because we don't know which bacteria they are talking about. We don't know what kind of action they are talking about and what antibiotic they have used. So, this is the revised version where the authors are trying to elaborate it in little bit details, like inhibition of growth of Mycobacterium tuberculosis by the streptomycin. So what they have done, they have indicated the action, whether it is inhibitory action or whether it is excitatory action, or they have also specified the name of the bacteria. They have also specified the name of the antibiotic they have used. So now their title is coming in like almost 2 lines, and which is more elaborative in nature, which is giving a some idea about the kind of work which authors have done in this manuscript. Okay, so in the similar manner, if we talk about these other two titles as well, they have also be refined into the way so that they can look, they are not supposed to be too long. For example, preliminary observation on the effect of Zn element on anti-corrosion of zinc plating layer, right? This is too long. Sometimes the titles which are too long, they also lose their meaning, just like very short titles. So they cannot be too short, they cannot be too long. So the better way to refine it is writing effect of zinc on anti-corrosion of zinc plating layer. So that's, concisely conveying the message which work authors have done in their present manuscript. Okay. Now next come the keywords. Keywords, why they are important and why you should be careful while picking the keywords for your manuscript. Most of the time we don't pay attention and we just pick like 2, 3 or 4, 5 keywords from the abstract, but they are very, very important because these are the words from which your work is going to be identified on different search engines, because the people who are working in your area, right, they will only be able to retrieve your article if you use the right kind of keywords. Okay. Sorry. So these are the labels of your manuscript, you can say, the keywords. Okay. And they are generally also used by the indexing and the abstracting services. It has to be really specific. Like if somebody is working in the field of pain, it can include one of the keywords should be pain. If it is diabetic neuropathy, then it can be the other keyword can be diabetes, something like that. And they should in the keywords you can use only established abbreviation like DNA or something like that. You're not supposed to use any non-standard abbreviation in your keywords. Okay. Yeah. So this is just another example for all of you. Like this is the title of the manuscript, like blade wake interactions in cross flow turbines. This is the title of a article. Now, what could be the possible keywords for this article? The first keyword can be, because it is talking about the cross flow turbine. So obviously, cross flow turbine will be the very first, keyword. Next could be the vertical axis turbine, because they are talking about the turbines, right? So turbine has different axes. Then H rotor, fluid structure interaction, wake blade interaction, high order discontinuous, sliding meshes. So these are the different terminologies which must be the part of your abstract, and that's why the authors are keeping them in their keyword section. Sometimes keyword section has limitation that you can put only 3 to 5 keywords, not more than that. Okay, so this is how it is decided. And then for rest of the guidelines, or you can refer the guide to authors for that particular manuscript. Okay. Now the next important section of your manuscript is the abstract of your work. So it is again a very important component of your work. Why? क्योंकि जब भी कोई आपके काम को रिट्राइव करेगा, they will go to PubMed, they will go to Google Scholar, or they will go to some other search engine, right? The very first thing which comes in front of the audience is the title of your manuscript, and then followed by the keywords and the abstract. Now, if the abstract which you have written is basically the gist of your complete work, this will be including the novelty, what is novelty in your work, and that will also talk a little bit about the methodology which you have adopted, and it will also talk about which problem you have identified and what are the solutions which you have for that problem, followed by the discussion and conclusion. But it has to be run in a very smart way where you can, just try to be as concise as possible. And every journal, they have their own requirement. Some journals, they have the guideline of structured abstract. So structured abstract means basically the abstract is already divided into 3-4 components. The first component may be aims and objective. Second may be material and methods. Third will be results, and fourth will be discussion and conclusion. So this is known as a structured abstract, where we'll be putting the different statement under the different subheadings, right? But there are certain journals which do not ask for the structured abstract. They straightforward ask for the unstructured abstract of like 250 words or 350 words. That means in that kind of abstract, आपको कोई हेडिंग या सब हेडिंग डालने की जरूरत नहीं है. आप जो भी लिखेंगे उसको एक फ्लो में लिखते जाएंगे, और 250, 300, 350 वर्ड का जो भी लिमिट दिया है गाइड टू ऑथर में उस जर्नल के, उसके हिसाब से आप उसको लिखेंगे. पर लिखते समय आप इस चीज का जरूर ध्यान रखेंगे कि कहीं भी आपका जो फ्लो है वो ब्रेक नहीं हो रहा हो. And you should be able to talk about the problem which you have picked, why you have picked that problem, what are the tools which you have used to answer that problem, to solve that problem, and then what results you got, followed by a one line of discussion. So this is just a, kind of, I would say, based on people experience, that what makes a good abstract. So if you follow the rule of 10 basically, then your manuscript will will really be good. So what does it mean? Whether it is a structured abstract or an unstructured abstract, you should dedicate only 1 to 2 sentences of your abstract under the aims and objective conditions. The next 2 to 3 sentences should be talking about the materials and methodology, and the next 2 to 3 sentences will be talking about the result part of your manuscript, followed by a 2 sentences of discussion and conclusion. So if you add up all these sentences, they are like almost 9 to 10 sentences. So this will not be a too lengthy abstract and neither be too short, which is of like optimum length of around like 9 to 10 sentences, and that makes your job more easier and your mixed abstract more attractive. Okay, then next comes another important avenue, which is like introduction section, right? So why introduction section is important? Introduction about again the problem on which you are working, the area on which you are working, and it will be talking about the current solutions which are there in the market. For example, if I talk about some disease condition like Alzheimer, Parkinson, which is generally the disease of the elderly, where they start having the learning and memory issues, or they have start having some motor coordination problem, जहाँ पे चल नहीं पाते, ठीक से बैठ नहीं पाते, हमेशा ट्रेमर्स होते हैं. तो इंट्रोडक्शन सेक्शन में आप सबसे पहले जो बात करेंगे, आप उस प्रॉब्लम को आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे, ठीक है ना, कि व्हाट इज अल्जाइमर डिसीज, व्हाट आर दिस पेशेंट्स, व्हाट इज द प्रिवलेंस ऑफ दिस डिसीज, कितने लोग पूरे दुनिया में इस डिसीज से सफर करते हैं. देन यू विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट द व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट ट्रीटमेंट्स व्हिच आर अवेलेबल फॉर द ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ दैट डिसीज. Okay, and then we will be talking about if there are already treatment which are present in the clinic, what are the issues or challenges with those treatment condition, because that will justify the background of your research, basically of your project. If there are already solution to this problem, why we need to do more research in that area? So the limitations exist, which are existing with the current treatment option will have the backing for your project basically. Okay, and okay, and then comes the methodology part basically, which will be mostly about the tools and techniques which you have used to answer that question. One thing I forget to mention here, in the introduction section, you are also supposed to mention the hypothesis of your work, like what you are expecting from this work basically, okay, and the novelty associated with the project. And then in the methodology part, you will be talking mostly about the techniques or the methodology which you might have adopted, to answer those questions basically, okay, which you have asked in the introductory section. But it should include the detailed information, to not so repetition. You have to make sure, if for example you have published the same kind of work in the past where the methodology is same just like the previous paper, so you don't have to write all the methodology in detail. Otherwise what will happen, the software like Turnitin or any other plagiarism software, they'll be suggesting that, okay, this data or this text has been copied from this much publication. Okay, so the most important thing is that you should avoid the repetition, so you can just cite your previous papers and write the methodology in 1 or 2 sentences. Another important point is that you need to identify the equipments and the materials which have been used, and you are supposed to enter all the details related to the manufacture of the equipment and the again the manufacture of the chemicals which you have used, along with the their catalog number. Even sometimes they ask for that as well, and sometimes you also need to use the notations like including chemical formula and symbols which you have used. And don't forget to present the control used in your study. Controls are very, very important in any study. If you don't have proper control in your study, then doesn't matter how good is your data, the data is never going to be accepted by anybody, including reviewers. So having the proper controls in any kind of study is very, very important. Okay. And then next comes the result part, which is, I would say the heart of your basically manuscript. And in result part, we mainly include the data which is of primary importance, or you can say the main data and the main data of your paper, and the data which is not main data, or you can say the unexpected data from your like experiments. That data you can include as a supplementary data in your basically manuscript at the end of your manuscript in just one PDF file or one Word document. And what you see in this picture, this layout below, right? This is basically an iceberg which is lying in an ocean, and on the top, if you see, there's very small part, maybe around 10 to 20% of the total iceberg, which is like in the ocean. So only 10 to 20% of the part is visible, which looks like the main data. But you just imagine, to support this main data, there's a lot of supplementary data, a lot of hard work which has been there, right? So this is almost like 70 to 80% of the data. Sometimes it can be part of the supplementary file, because this is supporting data. We call it supporting data as well. And then you can divide the result section into different subheadings if you want to keep them together. For example, if you have done some behavior studies, तो वहाँ पे सारे behavior studies को आप एक एक करके कंपाइल कर सकते हैं. देन आपके पास बायोकेमिकल स्टडी का डेटा है, तो आप बायोकेमिकल स्टडी के डेटा को भी सब हेडिंग वाइज उसको डिवाइड कर दीजिए. सो दिस वे you'll be able to classify the different components of the result section in a logical flow. And then you also have to use the figures and the tables for improving the efficiency and clarity of the work which you have carried out. And then you also need to provide the statistical analysis, just to make sure that the data which you have obtained is is statistically significant from each other or not. So this is the this again under the result part only, right? So for example, this is a figure which you have prepared for publishing in your manuscript, right? What do you see here? There is one y-axis and another one is the x-axis, right? And then there are certain data sets. You can say there are 4 different data sets basically, or you can say 4 different groups basically, which are plotted in this graph. So whenever plotting this kind of data, basically you need to be very careful what you are writing in the figure, inside the figure or around the figure. So the caption and the legend which you'll be using while depicting your data in the form of figure, they should be self-explanatory in nature. Why? Because sometimes what happens, people who are interested in your work, for example, they don't have time to read your whole paper. So what they will do, they will just, you know, uh, go through your figures and the data, which is pictorial in nature, and try to understand what you have done. So in short, if I say it, आपका जो फिगर है, it should be self-explanatory in nature. कोई भी जाए तो देखते बोले कि हाँ, yes, figure पढ़ लिया और data समझ में आ गया कि what is the conclusion. Okay. And then you also need to make sure that there's a good variation between the visual versus space. And then you have to use a color only when it is necessary. There are many journals which do not accept the color images. Why? Because publishing your hard copy of your, basically that particular journal where your article is published is difficult to publish in color. It includes a lot of cost. Yeah, but you want to offer black and white, it is free of cost. So that's why most of the graphs you can try to prepare in black and white, unless until it is really mandatory that it has to be color in nature. For example, immunohistochemistry data, right, or the cell culture data where you're doing the imaging, right, that kind of data cannot be in black and white. It has to be in the pictorial manner only, colorful manner. Okay. Again, if you talk about the graphs, so graphs should be uncrowded and they should only be restricted to the data sets basically. Okay. And scales are very, very important, as I mentioned. For example, the gap you are using between different, y-axis labels, and then label size is also important. What is the label size between, different labels? And then if there is a pictorial data basically in the form of photos, just like this one, then the scale marker becomes very, very important. Okay. And most important thing is that one is not supposed to enhance the quality of the image by using any of the existing software like Adobe Photoshop or something else. Many times students don't know this, that more than 90% of the papers are being retracted because of their problems in the pictorial data set, just like this, immunohistochemistry or any other kind of data set. Okay, so do not try to play with the images. So whatever image you have received from the instrument, that image you should try to use as such in your publication. If you play too much with the publication image, then it will come under the data fabrication and manipulation, guideline. Okay, so this is another representation of your result findings. You just see this, sentence which is being mentioned on the left hand side of this panel, right? If you look here, there's a lot of data they are talking about, like, in the left MABG, and then they're talking about left superior frontal gyrus, and then they are talking about different brain regions where they are talking about different coordinates which are being present there. So this looks too confusing and too complex to me personally. So the better way to present this kind of data is to make a table basically. Okay, because this is too much data basically. One don't have time to go through each and every line. So best way to present this kind of data is in the form of tabular format. Now there is another kind of data which has been published here in the form of table. But if you look at this, it doesn't require a table actually. If you just see here, this the growth medium aeration was essential for the growth of S. collicular, right? At room temperature in a stationary culture, bacterial growth was not measurable, whereas in aerated culture, substantial growth was evident. So it's very easy that this kind of data can be written in a one paragraph or one sentence. So when this is the case, then there is no need of the result to be presented in the form of tabular format. Okay. Now next comes the discussion part, and this is like not but almost close to the end part of your manuscript writing. So in discussion, mostly authors talk about the interpretation part, like whatever results they have received, they discuss that results in light of the existing literature. And that's why it is the most important section of your manuscript, because here you'll be talking about the pros and cons of your work basically. And that will be comparing with the already published literature. And then you can make the discussion corresponding to the results, and then, complement them in your manuscript, and then compare with the data which is already out there. Most important thing while writing your discussion, always remember it. You should not write the sentences that go beyond what the results can support. Okay, so you have to be very careful. Sometimes I see that students or even some faculty members, they write very bold sentences and they claim very tall. But in science, you cannot claim, very high, very tall, because you know that more than, if I talk about the drug discovery, more than 99% of the drugs which passes the clinical trial, they get failed in the, the clinical, phases. Okay, and then you should avoid the non-specific expressions, okay, which are not very clear. And then the new terms which are already not defined somewhere in the manuscript in the beginning, you should avoid indicating them in the discussion part, which are not mentioned somewhere earlier in your paper. So don't bring them at this moment. And then also speculations on possible interpretation that are not rooted in the facts. So always talk on the facts, on published literature, what is in front of them. Don't talk something which is imaginary or claiming very high, because that will confuse the audience. Okay, and then the next part is the conclusion part of your manuscript. So conclusion part of your manuscript is basically mostly about, so here in discussion part, you'll be mostly citing the work, which is done by others in your research area, and then complementing your findings with their work. But in the conclusion section, you are not citing any references. Mostly you'll be talking about like how your present work will advances this current field or the present state of knowledge. And here, most importantly, you are not supposed to, discuss about the findings or the results, or you're not supposed to talk anything which you have already discussed in the abstract section. So this component of the manuscript is mainly about the application part of your work, like in terms of the, uses or extension of the further work, or you can suggest the future experiments, even what should be done in the future, or mainly about the application part, whatever findings you have got, how they can be applied scientifically, in that particular area. And then you have to be very, very clear, so that the reviewers can get help, and the editor also can get help and judge the work and its impact. Okay, when you submit it for the publication. And then the next comes the acknowledgement part. Okay, and again, many people don't know what is supposed to come in the acknowledgement section and what is supposed to come in the authorship section. And many times people do this kind of mistakes. They put the name of the people in the authorship, even without understanding that they have not contributing anything which accounts for the authorship. So as a scientist, as a scientific person, you should be able to understand if you have taken some kind of help from any other lab or any other student, so depending upon what kind of help they have done, you have to decide whether it is really in form of data generation, or it is just because the like any other reason. Okay, so you have to include the individuals who have really assisted in your work, like your advisor or any financial supporter. Like in case of India, the main funding agencies are Department of Biotechnology, Indian Council of Medical Research, or Department of Science and Technologies. So these are the different funding agencies which support the research, and if the work is supported by these funding agencies, we can mention their name in the acknowledgement section along with the grant number, the project number basically. Okay, and then if somebody has helped you to proofread your manuscript, now there the problem starts. Sometimes people they expect that, okay, if they have proofread your manuscript, even your batchmates, or your colleagues basically, or your maybe some of other students in the lab, they help their colleagues in proofreading the manuscript, and then they expect the authorship there. But let me tell you, authorship is given only in the case where actually there is some sort of data which is present in the manuscript and generated by that person, another person. So in that case, they can be given the the name in the decide. You have to decide whether it accounts for the like real data, and then it will come in the authorship section, otherwise it will come in the acknowledgement section. Again, typing, if somebody has helped in typing your work, that also goes in the acknowledgement section. Sometimes supplier who have given you the drugs or chemicals, or somebody has given you the gift sample of some molecule or some of the thing which is useful in your research, right? So those kind of details will also come in the acknowledgement section. And next comes the reference part, basically, which is I would say one of the most annoying part for journals, because most of the people don't pay attention in the referencing of their manuscript. Up to discussion acknowledgement, they think that their job is done, and then they don't realize that the actual problem is present in the reference part. Okay, and thank God that these days we have the different tools and softwares with us, which helps us to arrange the references as per like any journalist style, and it can do it in like fraction of seconds. You just go to that pay web, the you have to save it as a library, the references, and then when you select particular style, your references will be converted into that style within fraction of seconds. And if you talk about like references, like they should cite the main scientific publication on your work is based. Now the question is that how many references should be there in a research manuscript? So in a good research manuscript, the reference should not be more than 40 or 50. You're not supposed to like cite like a number of publication. The another problem in today's world, where everybody is running in a kind of race, and everybody want to publish as much as they can, and also want to have more and more citations. They inflate their manuscript with too much of their self-citation. But let me tell you, this can go against you. Right now, maybe people are not looking on these aspects, but maybe after 5 years or 10 years, there will be ways by which people will be able to figure out, okay, out of a total number of citations, how many citation belongs to your own articles and how many citation belongs to the other labs. So if somebody else is citing your work, that indicates the true value or reward for your work. But if you yourself are just like citing it too many times in your papers itself, that indicates the kind of habit of self citation which should be avoided. Okay, and then also avoid this excessive citation of publication from the same region. That should also be balanced, geographical balance we call it. Okay, and these are some of the two software tools: reference works, reference manager, and the EndNote, which are widely used for referencing the manuscript. Okay, now what is the time right now? So it is 5:41. So we will take a break for tea. Like 5:41, we will start at 6 o'clock for the remaining part of the.
Okay.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So 6 p.m. we are going to start. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Okay, so now we will be talking about the next important part of your manuscript publishing, which is submitting your paper. So once you are done with writing all your manuscript, compiling all your data, then the most important part comes, which is like submitting your paper. So most of the time, the corresponding author or the supervisor, deals with this aspect. But this is mutual basically between the student and the supervisor, whether he or she is a master student or PhD student or the postdoc student in your lab. So you just see this cartoon, here is depicting, the student has written the first draft of her manuscript, and then she's giving it to her supervisor for revision, then getting the draft 2, 3, and then subsequently, so finally, when the supervisor agreed, okay, now this is, like enough, like revisions, corrections, then the final draft is approved for submission in the journal. So before you submit your manuscript for publication in a journal, you also need to submit a cover letter along with your manuscript. So cover letter is nothing, it's just like a job application letter. So most of the time, again, we do not give much emphasis to it, but it is an important component of your manuscript publication part. So it is just like selling your work to the audience, to the editors basically. And what are you supposed to mention in the cover letter? You need to mention why did you submit the manuscript to this journal. So in the cover letter, you are not supposed to summarize the work which you have carried out in this manuscript. Or you're not supposed to repeat the abstract of your work. The most important thing which you would like to mention in the cover letter is that why do you feel or why do you think that this manuscript is suitable for publication in their journal. So that is one thing which you can justify to the editor-in-chief or the associate editors, then I think they will be happy to take your manuscript for publication in their journal for consideration at least. And then you can mention some special requirement, like if you do not wish someone to review your manuscript, because sometimes some people may have very good relations with some of their friends who don't want their manuscript to get published, so which is related to the conflict of interest. So sometimes those kind of options are there. There are like 10 editors or like somebody like which you don't want them to handle your manuscript, one of them, that also you can indicate. If there's some specific reviewer you don't want to review your manuscript, you can mention their name in the cover letter. So that comes under the स्पेशल रिक्वायरमेंट. तो वो सभी जर्नल्स का एक रहता है कि कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है या कोई इश्यू है, कोई प्रॉब्लम है, तो वो आप लिख सकते हैं कवर लेटर में विदाउट एनी हेजिटेशन. मोस्ट एडिटर विल नॉट रिजेक्ट अ मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट ओनली बिकॉज द कवर लेटर इज बैड. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है. अगर आपने कवर लेटर पे ध्यान नहीं दिया, आपने कुछ भी 2 लाइन 4 लाइन में लिख के आपने जमा कर दिया, तो ठीक है, nobody is going to reject your work for this cover letter, poor cover letter. Yes, लेकिन एक बात जरूरी है, अगर आपका कवर लेटर अगर अच्छा होगा तो it may accelerate the editorial process of your paper. So that is one thing which you need to understand as a scientist, as a corresponding author, that cover letter has value. Now, conflict of interest, which is again very important component, and again most of us don't bother about that. You just imagine a situation where you are having a consultancy project from some pharmaceutical company, or if they are involved in drug discovery, or you have some consultancy, maybe if you are a civil engineer, you have consultancy from some cement industry or some transport ministry or something like that. You need to indicate that in the conflict of interest statement, because the data which you are publishing may directly or indirectly favor that particular company or organization. So if that is the case, even if that is not the case, then also you are supposed to mention it in the conflict of interest statement. Sometimes it can be a direct financial conflict which is related to employment, grants, patents, and sometimes it can be indirect, like sometimes we get the honorary or the consultancy charges, for doing some of the work for the industries. Sometimes it can be career related as well, like promotion, rivalry, and due to some other aspects as well. So in any of these cases, we are supposed to disclose the conflict of interest. That will save you from any kind of future trouble, because if you don't disclose the conflict of interest statement, then maybe after 1 year, 2 year, 4 year, maybe somebody may complain about this, that, okay, this person was having a project, consultancy project, from this pharma company or some other company or ministry, and he to favor that particular industry. So that is also very, very important. Now the next stage, after you are done with submitting your manuscript to the journal, what happens to your manuscript? आपके manuscript साथ होता क्या है actually? So just like we are also editors, in many of the journals, and also acting for as reviewers for many of the journals, and many times the manuscript comes to us for review, but due to workload we cannot, accept all the manuscript for reviewing. Yeah, लेकिन जो manuscript हमारे field की होती है, हमारे area की होती है, we generally, accept those manuscript for review. Now, what do you see in this cartoon? Here is this gentleman holding his, like papers of like hard work, which he has spent like almost many years, to compile this work. And then he tried to cross this, road and want to go to the last where paper is accepted. But you just see the situation. There are a lot of people, who are on his ways with a lot of, tools, weapons, and making sure that this person should not be able to go there. But let me tell you, these people are not bad people. He is the author who want his manuscript to get published, but these people are the editors, reviewers, associate editors, or other reviewers who are there to help you out. So once you submit your manuscript, if your manuscript is at certain standards of that journal, it will go for review to the reviewers, and these are the people, reviewers, who will read your manuscript thoroughly and will give you comments and suggestions, some major comments, some minor comments, and based on that they want you to respond, to answer their questions, or to incorporate some suggestions in your manuscript. So that will help you to improve the quality of your manuscript. Okay, and sometimes it happens for like more than one time or two times. So that will really help you to make sure that your manuscript reaches certain standards as per that particular journal. So these are not bad guys, actually. These are helpful guys. They are helping you, to reach certain standards. Now this is actually what is happening when you are submitting a paper. So you are the author, you have compiled your manuscript, you submitted it to the editor-in-chief, and if your paper is meeting the basic requirement of publication, then the person, the editor may say yes and may send your manuscript for publication, in not for publication, just for reviewing by the different reviewers, and they will assign it to maybe 2 or 3 reviewers depending upon the journal guidelines. But if the editor-in-chief or associate editor directly feels that your manuscript is not meeting the basic criteria, or your manuscript is not of scientific interest to the audience of their journal, they will directly say no and will reject your manuscript. Okay, and once it is rejected, then it will come back to the author for submission in some other journal. But I generally feel that this rejection is better. Why? Because the journals who take your manuscript and keep with them for like 1 month or for 2 months, and then they reject it, so that is much worse, because they are killing your time. If some journals are there which can quickly respond in 1 or 2 days and tell you, okay, this manuscript can be considered for publication or not. So okay, and then after the reviewers are assigned for your manuscript, if it goes for review, it is a job of the associate editor or sometimes editor-in-chief to collect the reviewer will review a manuscript and will review and give the suggestions. And then this is the job of the editor to collect all the reviewer's recommendation, and based on the reviewer suggestion, editor can again make a choice. So one choice can be like, if reviewers are against the publication of your manuscript in that journal, then associate if both the reviewers, for example, right? In that case, editor doesn't have a choice. He just have to reject your manuscript based on the reviewer suggestion. But just imagine a situation where one reviewer feels that, okay, this manuscript is an important piece of work and it can be considered for publication with some minor corrections or revision, while at the same time जो दूसरा रिव्यूअर है वो कहता है कि ये जो मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट है देयर इज नो नोवेल्टी एंड हमको इसको रिजेक्ट करना पड़ेगा. तो यहाँ पे एक्चुअली एडिटर इन चीफ के लिए, एसोसिएट एडिटर के लिए इट्स अ काइंड ऑफ धर्म संकट काइंड ऑफ सिचुएशन की जहाँ पे उसको लगता है कि नाउ व्हाट टू डू बेसिकली. बट हियर द सिस्टम gave him certain you can say powers where he can again send your manuscript to some other reviewer, basically reviewer 3, for his suggestions. But if your reviewer 3 also reject your manuscript, then it is likely to be rejected, because out of 3, 2 has rejected. But yes, if the third reviewer says, okay, this is an important piece of work and with some suggestions and correction, this can be considered for publication. So in that case, the editor will send the manuscript and will collect the comments, and they will pass on those comments to you as the author and will put it for revision required. Now it can be a major revision, it can be a minor revision. Most of the time the first revision is major revision, and then once you receive the paper and the comments, then you start revising your paper, and once you are done with revising the paper, you again resubmit it for publication. And then this time, if you have addressed all the concerns raised by the reviewer carefully, you have incorporated the suggestions given by them. In this case, this manuscript is now accepted for publication. Okay. Now the production team will contact you basically. Okay, for publication of your work. Okay. Now, what are the criteria which any reviewer must be looking for in your manuscript? So you just see this picture, which is a plot between novelty versus technical quality. Novelty is on the y-axis, while technical quality is on the x-axis. If you just look at this figure, there's one work which is low, or you get the poor on novelty and poor also on technical quality. This kind of work can never be accepted for publication. Nobody will take this kind of work. But just imagine a second situation where the novelty of the work, proposed work, is very high, but the technical quality is basically the novelty is high and the technical quality is poor. So that kind of work is questionable basically, whether it can be published or not, and vice versa as well. In some cases, if technical quality is high and novelty is poor, just in then also the work is questionable whether it can be published or not. But there is a fourth scenario where the work is very high in terms of novelty and also high in terms of technical quality. So that kind of work, is more likely to be accepted by the reviewer, appreciated by the reviewer. Okay. And yeah, so that kind of work, people want to look for. Now, the next important point which I wanted to discuss with all of you today, which is related to the plagiarism, which is a major issue these days. A lot of people are facing, not only in India, but they're also facing it in other parts of the world as well. So most of the time, I think it's unintentional as well, and sometimes it is intentional as well. So as a faculty member, if you're in some good standing at a good position, and you are not careful about what the students are doing in the lab, sometimes unintentionally or intentionally, then you can fall, into all these issues. So you have to be very careful about it. Now, the first question is, what is plagiarism? So very simple definition of plagiarism is simply, is to steal and pass off the ideas or words of another and claim it as their own. Or you can say you want to use those and claiming them as your own without giving the credit to the source, basically. It is known as plagiarism. So for example, some work has been carried by someone else and I start claiming that work as mine work, and then put my label. Okay, this is Vinod Tiwari's work. That is known as cheating, is stealing. So this kind of thing is known as a plagiarism. Sometimes data fabrication, also comes under the plagiarism basically. And if we talk like how it may happen, so it can happen, as I mentioned, most of the time, it is unintentional. So it can happen accidentally, and it applies even if you paraphrase. So just imagine, like we have softwares and tools, these days. Thankfully, we also have Turnitin in IIT BHU, which will scan your whole document, whole manuscript file to find out how much content of your, content of your manuscript you have taken from which, publication, and it might be your previous publication as well. So that is very important that, whenever you are taking some content, you think it is useful, you have to paraphrase, that sentences in your own language. But sometime, even if you paraphrase, sometime it can still come under the plagiarism if it is not properly paraphrased. So paraphrasing has to be done properly. So using other sources is good as long as you cite them. Citing them means you are giving due credit to the original innovator of that work. So always, learn how to give the credit to the original innovator of that work. So that's why whenever you are, you can say some pathways or diagrams or anything you are citing in your presentation as well, you need to give the clear cut citation, from where you have taken that picture, some article, some web page or something like that, right? So so there is nothing wrong in taking that. They easily give the approval, but most important thing is that you need to give the proper credit by giving the proper citation. And yeah, okay, good. Now these are some of the consequences, which may be there when there is a plagiarism basically. Okay, so in our country the guidelines are still not that strict, but I know that in coming years, the the situation may be similar to other like countries, like in the western part of the world. If some of the papers they come under the plagiarism basically, then ones can have a penalties related to their grades, and the students can also fail the course as well, whether it is a master course or a PhD course. And most importantly, it leads a lot of harm to the academic integrity of that person, of that particular lab, and at the same time, uh, harm to the institute as well, a lot of harm. And then the institute sometimes can take the disciplinary action also against that faculty member, even if the this plagiarism is unintentional. And I know, there are many people in the west, like Europe or America, who has been trapped in some kind of unintentional plagiarism, and they resign from their position, even before somebody else will remove them. So there could be certain disciplinary action by the government, by the institute against, okay. And then suspension or expulsion. In extreme cases, the person can be suspended also, can be removed from the job as well. So I have not, heard any of these cases in India, but yeah, in coming years, that may be possible because this is already happening in the West. So you have to be very careful about this. Okay. Now, the most important point is that how you can avoid the plagiarism. Just three important steps, or, which you can follow to prevent your work from being plagiarized by intentionally or unintentionally. So always keep a list of all the sources you have consulted. Make a separate Word file where you can list all the references or all the sources from where you are taking different parts of your manuscript, like different paragraphs, sentences, some pictures, anything. So keep it separate. And then these sources could be websites, as I mentioned, videos, magazines, some scientific literature, or whatever. And then note down sources, just in case, even if you're not sure you will use them or not. That's very important. Even if you're not sure, but still you have to note them down. And yeah, second is, these are the details which you're supposed to indicate when you are noting it down, like what is the author name, source title, publication date, their publisher, page number, DOI or SS data for the online. So these are the different information which you can fill basically. Okay. And then comes a step 2 where you are supposed to quote or paraphrase the sentences. If you're taking some sentences from other manuscript, including your previous work, the most important thing is that you should know how to paraphrase the program. Okay, so this is a thing here, just an example, so one is quoting, so copy the author's exact words. Can you do that? Not exactly. You have to put the text into your own words, into your own language basically. That is known as paraphrasing basically. If you're just putting the word sentence exactly in the same like manner what it has been done in the original manuscript, which is already published, that will definitely come under the plagiarism. So you have to put the text into your own words. Okay. And then the step 3, always cite the original source. So there are a lot of things, literature which you are citing while writing your manuscript, whether it is a research manuscript or a review manuscript. You need to indicate the in-text citation, briefly identifying the source from which you have taken that information. Okay. And a reference list gives all source of information that you can have, while making this. And then you can follow consistent citation style. There are different kind of citation style, but you should be consistent, like in what you want to follow. And then there are certain online citation generators also that can also help you, in carrying out this. And then this is known as the in-text citation. Like somewhere in the manuscript, like maybe in the introduction section or in the material methods or in the discussion section, you are quoting some sentences, you are paraphrasing it in your own language, and then you are writing the name of the authors, okay, who has carried out that work before. And then this will come in the last part of where you're enlisting all the list of references. So there you can write it in some particular format, like maybe Times New Roman or Harvard style or any. There are different styles basically. Okay, so you can follow as per the journal guidelines. Okay. Now the most important question here is that how the plagiarism is detected. So just like most of the academic institutes these days, they have the softwares and the tools to detect the journals, the publisher, they also use these tools to identify whether the work which is being submitted to their journal, is full of any kind of, this kind of, content which is plagiarized by author intentionally or unintentionally. So, okay. Then here you can compare your document to a database of the sources. When you put your article, when you upload your article on the software web page, the software compares your document with all the database which is available in its memory and try to figure out, okay, to which document the content of your manuscript is matching. And then it detects the text which is too similar to the other sources, and it also detects where citations are missing. So that can also help. So it has a lot of like I would say useful function for you. Then you can also check if you can download a plagiarism report when you submit your assignment. But yes, I think most of the these advanced tool softwares, they can help you to download a final report at the end of the checking your whole document. They will give you a kind of plagiarism report in which they are going to indicate like what is the similarity index. So they don't call it a plagiarism index, they call it similarity index. Similarity index, especially in case of Turnitin, means how much of your document, how much percent is similar to the already published literature. So generally people prefer that the plagiarism should not be more than 10%. But under certain exceptional condition, where methodology is showing as plagiarism or some other important issues, it is recommended to keep it below 15% or below 20%. But ideally is like less than 10%. And okay. So these are some of the questions for all of you. Do you think that you still need to cite your source even when you paraphrase? The second question is, plagiarism is always deliberate. And the third is, online sources do not to be cited. So the answer to the first question is yes. Whether you are quoting or paraphrasing, you always need a citation. Okay, even you are paraphrasing, you're just taking some content, but providing the citation is still required. And it is not always deliberate. Many students, they do it by mistake, without understanding that it can lead to such a big issue. And if we talk about online sources, do not need to be cited. It is also false. If you use online sources, you need to them cite to actually. Okay. So, yeah. Now the next part of the presentation, which is the last part of the presentation for today's discussion, is how to respond to the reviewers' comments. It is very, very important. Once your manuscript is submitted to the journal, reviewer has already gone through your manuscript and they prepared a detailed report on your manuscript and ask you to submit the revised version of your manuscript. Okay, so here, this is again an art. How you are responding to the reviewers without hurting their self-ego. Okay, so just imagine a situation here. Reviewer is asking a question. Yes, we know. We thought we could still get a paper out of it. This is, you think the right way to respond to the reviewer comment? No, not at all. There could be a more polite and more scientific way to answer the same question. The current response is that the reviewer raises an interesting concern. However, as the focus of this work is exploratory in nature and it's not performance-based, we feel that validation was not found to be of critical importance to the contribution of this paper. So just elaborate a little bit and just focus more on the scientific aspect, like why you think, it has to be done in this particular way only and not in that particular way. So that's important. Okay. And then the second comment by the reviewer is that authors fail to reference the work of Smith et al., who solved the same problem 20 years ago. So you cannot write like this. We didn't think anybody had read that. Actually, their solution is better than ours. So this is such a non-scientific way and arrogant way of replying to the reviewers. I'm 100% sure if somebody will like that, will write like that, reviewers will just, close their, their computer and will not respond to the comments, or they will straightforward reject your work. Okay. So the more better way to answer this, question is that the reviewer raises an interesting concern. However, our work is based on completely different first principle and has a much more attractive graphical user interface. So you need to convince the reviewer in a much, I would say, beautiful manner, right? So that they get convinced with your work. Okay. So these are some of the reviews and assignments which I intentionally kept for all of you, which we keep on receiving time to time. These are just some of them. And then these are just some of the publications, in the past few years from our lab. And then this work is published in, PNAS and then Life Science. And this is the team of hardworking students, who are always, they are, working hard day and night for their projects, different projects. And we're also thankful to, different funding agencies like Indian Council of Medical Research.
Hello, sir. Sir,
Yes,
hello.
yes, yes.
Sir, I just missed how to respond to the reviewer for the journals. I just missed
Okay.
that part.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Here, right? Here?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So as I mentioned, replying to reviewer is also an art, right? So depending upon your area of research, right? The most important thing is that how you are framing your sentences when addressing the reviewer concerns. So for example, here I have put one, like instance for you, like example, reviewer is asking a question, for example, the method, device, paradigm the authors propose is clearly wrong. For example, this is the comment by the reviewer. Okay. Now, this is you as the author. So Yes, we know. We thought we could still get a paper out of it. Sorry, right? So this is a very blunt way or the irresponsible way of responding to the reviewer. So now the better way to address the reviewer query is basically you can mention like reviewer raises an interesting concern. So you have to answer it scientifically so that without, like hurting anybody and being polite and putting your points in a more scientific and technical manner. However, as the focus of this work is exploratory in nature and not performance based, validation was not found to be of critical importance to contribution of this. So you are politely, putting your point forth and declining their point of view as well, instead of bluntly, responding to the reviewer. So these are just few of the examples, how people, they are supposed to respond to the reviewer queries. It has to be done scientifically. This is what I mean to say. You're not supposed to talk like a layman and talking bluntly and arrogantly. That is going to create a more problem for you. Okay. So it is the art which once needs to be. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. And then these are some of the publications, as I mentioned. These are the funding agencies, which have supported us. So yeah, for today, I think we will just stop here. Maybe in some other session, we will talking more about the grant things, like how to, write a grant, how to, secure the funding for your lab. If you are doing some experimental work or even computational work also require funding to purchase new software. So that will be the, I think, topic of discussion for next day sometime. So I would like to, end my talk here with this simple quote that anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or he or she is at 80. Anyone who keeps learning, they always stay young. So learning should never end, because it will keep you young forever. And this is the beautiful heart of Varanasi. If any one of you are coming to Varanasi anytime, feel free to write to us and come to the city, one of the historical city. And thank you so much for your kind attention. If you have some specific question, I would be happy to answer.
Sir, plagiarism softwares are very costly, and our institute
they
are
are.
not paying
Yeah.
for that. So what to do?
Yeah,
Where we
you are
can
right.
purchase it?
You are right, madam. Actually, plagiarism softwares are really expensive and not all the institutes can afford it. So one way, there are some online, softwares are also available. Although they are not that good actually, but still they can serve the basic purpose. वो एक मोटा मोटा आपको आइडिया दे देंगे. तो बहुत सारे ओपन सॉफ्टवेयर प्रेजेंट हैं गूगल में. अगर आप गूगल करेंगे, ढूंढेंगे, you'll find some softwares are there. हालांकि वो उतना डिटेल में आपको नहीं बता पाएंगे, but still you will get a rough idea about like how much content is plagiarized and how much content you have to change. And the second option which you can do, you can collaborate with someone, or you can take the help from someone who is having access to this software, and you people can make a team and can work together and get the help from them. That is another way.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. Any other questions from any of the participants? Feel free to ask. Okay, so if there are no questions, we will end this session over here only. We request all of you to kindly submit your feedback. Okay, and we are thankful to your patient listening. So I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Wish you all the best.
Excuse me, sir. Somebody will be talking about the grants in coming lectures.
Yeah, if you are interested, then maybe in the next section we will take up that topic. That is also
So please do that, because really, I think all the participants must be interested in like knowing how to take a grants and all that.
Sure, Dr. Johi. So yeah, I think today we were not having enough time, but because that needs another separate session. So you can request our TLC, and maybe some they can schedule this. I don't know how long your program is, but yeah, we can take up that session definitely.
Sir, I would like to also mention one more topic, if possible, that is patent.
Patent, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if that will be also very helpful.
Yeah. You can put in writing, just send an email to our, office TLC, and they'll be able to, coordinate, for that topic as well.
Sir, a quick query regarding the materials and methods you mentioned, that 4 to 5%. Actually, like for the UGC regulations, that 21%. They say that that is what the instruction, but that part is not clear. Like you said it, 10% or including the methods, right? Or can we like usually for the PhD thesis, materials and methods, we exclude it and restrict to 20%, but usually we restrict 10%.
Yeah, actually,
bottom line, right?
Yeah. So actually, that's the problem, that's a good point actually what you have made, Dr. Sarath. So because the problem is that, material methods, whenever you keep the material method, it will always show some kind of, similarity index.
Exactly.
Because you are using the same kind of tools, techniques, and same kind of, like methodology. So it doesn't matter how many times you paraphrase your sentences, it is going to detect some kind of similarity index always. So some journals, they do allow, then you can take out the material methods and then do the, this plagiarism check. So that is also one way to do it. Yeah. So 10% sometimes is too tight, but as I mentioned, like different bodies may have different, guidelines. So I just told you the general guidelines, like,
But true, sir. Just I'm wondering, for IITs, you guys for PhD thesis, for example, we restrict to 21 in UGC system, and you guys restrict to 10%, please.
No. We also consider if it is like less than 20%, we consider it. But we prefer if it is less than 10%, it is great.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thanks, sir. Yeah.
Sure. Any other questions from any other participants?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. So then wish you all the best. Thank you for your kind listening. Thank you so much.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.